We will call the first meeting of the Pennsylvania Conservation and Natural Resource Advisory Council of 2025 to order. Thanks everybody for being here. We have a good agenda as always with a number of great speakers who are joining us today to talk about various perspectives on access and accessibility to our public lands. And so after we give our council report and take our first public comment period, we'll turn it over to our speakers. And Secretary Dunn will actually be joining us later in the agenda. She's just traveling in from a conference. And that's actually where Marcy will be heading after she's done with us. So thanks in advance, Marcy, for fitting us in. As we always do, we'll just do some quick introductions before we open up for our first public comment. I'm Silas Chamberlain. I chair the council. I work at the York County Economic Alliance in my day job.
Hey, good morning. Nicole Farraguna. I'm the policy director at DCNR and the liaison for CONRAC.
Hi, Ryan Such, CONRAC administrator with Grow Conservation.
Thad Taylor, CONRAC board member, forester from Coudersport, Pennsylvania.
Jerry Walls, CONRAC board member, retired county planning director of Lycoming County for 38 years, and involved with the Susquehanna Greenway Partnership and a number of trail initiatives, Pine Creek Rail Trail among them.
Sierra Fogel, CONRAC board member, business owner, Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania.
Marcy Mowry, president of the Pennsylvania Parks and Forest Foundation.
Ephraim Zimmerman, CONRAC board member and conservation science director at Western Pennsylvania Conservancy.
Gary Cribbs, board member, geologist with EN Geoscience.
Bob Kirshner, L County, retired safety consultant, wood products industry, and avid snowmobiler and motorized recreationalist.
Good morning, everybody. Sarah Hall, Director of Forestry for the American Forest Foundation Family Forest Carbon Program, and from Lackawanna County.
Sarah. And our audience and speaker members today. Wonderful, thank you. And we do have several CONRAC members joining us remotely today. Rocco, do you want to introduce yourself?
Good morning, all council members and visitors. Apologize for not being there, but I did have a serious neck operation. I'm just not feeling up to it, but I would like to attend the meeting, and thank you for allowing me.
Well, thanks for being here, Rocco. We hope you have a speedy recovery. Jennifer?
Hello, hi, I'm Jennifer. I am sorry I couldn't be there today. I am representing Philadelphia, so I'm here in Philadelphia, the city. Thank you.
Thank you. And Geraldine?
Geraldine Umstead Singer. Good morning, everybody. CONRAC board member and volunteer and caregiver.
And I don't think I've missed anybody else, but thank you to the members that are joining us remotely for being on. We will now open up our first public comment period. Are there any comments from the public? I don't think we'll have any here in person, but any online? Okay, we haven't received any in advance, so okay. And of course, we'll have a second public comment period later in the agenda. So now we'll move forward to our approval of the prior meeting minutes. You should have received these in advance as part of your board packet from Ryan. Are there any comments, additions, revisions to the minutes? And if not, could I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Barry, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Sarah. All those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. The minutes are approved. And now we'll move on to a council report and our working group updates. I just have a few quick updates. One is that our colleague Matt, who had served on CONRAC for several years and had been executive director of the Pennsylvania Forest Products Association, recently accepted a position on the staff of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. So just wanted to acknowledge Matt Gobler's contributions to CONRAC, his role in continuing to connect CONRAC to the forest products industry and the legislature. And obviously, it's not a bad thing to have Matt in a role with the PA House. And obviously, he's more familiar with CONRAC's role now and DCNR's role. So we'll continue to collaborate with Matt. I know the Forest Products Association is working on hiring their next executive director, and there's an interim there. So we'll certainly keep the communication channels open.
What's his new job?
What is his actual title?
He is the Chief of Staff to Representative Struzzi, who is the Minority Chair on the Appropriations Committee.
Yep. And then similar vein, Sarah, I don't know if you want to share your update with the group.
Yeah, so it's been a pleasure to serve on the council, and unfortunately, this will be my last probably in-person meeting. I might be here virtually, but I'm moving to Colorado, and so been in Pennsylvania my whole life. Time to try something new, but appreciate my time here and hoping that the council, replaces me with someone with a diverse background and environmental or conservation, something like that, the kind of well-round the council. So thanks again for my appointment, and I hope the council continues its good work.
Well, thank you, Sarah, for all your contributions to CONRAC. We've appreciated it and obviously wish you the best. It's pretty sad commentary on Pennsylvania's weather when you're moving to Colorado for warmer temperatures. but thank you. I know, he's probably too happy. But thank you, Sarah. We appreciate it. And I'm sure maybe Nicole can touch on just our work during your report on filling some of our vacancies, and just a quick an update there. Just to cover a few other things, we provided the...
Where in Colorado?
The Frisco, Leadville area. So avid snowboarder, sort of been my dream to be closer to some mountains. Yeah, so it's pretty much like in between Breckenridge, Copper Mountain, all those places. Yeah, skiing 8 months out of the year, so
not bad. At our last meeting, we approved the letter from CONRAC on ATV registration and fees. But that's now been provided to DCNR's leadership as well as the legislature. So thank you to CONRAC members who weighed in on that. We'll certainly stay in touch as that moves forward. I just wanted to note, in our business meeting after the public meeting, we will discuss the responses from the field visit survey that 11 of you completed. So thank you for that. And we'll also talk about CONRAC conversations. We have tried to be more proactive in planning out future topics for CONRAC meetings. So we have a rough idea of what we're doing in the coming year. Just to give you all a heads up on topics, our March meeting will focus on the Chesapeake Bay and the work of DCNR, Department of Agriculture, and DEP collectively around that. And Nicole has secured some great speakers from each. So in addition to our normal council business, we'll have a focus on Chesapeake Bay. And then in May, we're looking at the economics of trails. I'll present some data and information that I've been working on, and then hopefully Pennsylvania Environmental Council will be joining us to talk about some work they're doing in different regions around the state, but also holistically. And then,
Silas?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to also contribute to whatever you want.
That'd be fantastic.
Impact of trails.
Yep.
So I'm involved with a number of trail.
Absolutely. Sounds good, Jerry. Thanks. And then we have several others that we're, still putting together, but between those two coming and then our July or September field visit, really we have the rest of the year kind of scoped out. I also wanted to just remind people, because I saw DCNR posting about it, that the Pennsylvania Outdoor Corps is hiring leaders for their summer program. I think, if you do know people that are interested, you have to be at least 21 to be a leader, but there are locations throughout Pennsylvania. And it's just been a great model program. I think that's continued to generate a lot of interest and bridge the gap between DCNR's work and workforce development, really trying to expose people, particularly young people, to careers in conservation. So if you do know people that are looking for summer employment, I'm sure anyone on the DCNR team can connect them to the appropriate person. I also just wanted to note, because it's of general interest, that at the very end of 2024, the federal government took a number of actions that are really positive for the kind of work that CONRAC is focused on. The Explore Act was passed with unanimous consent in the Congress, or by Congress, which is kind of unheard of, that kind of bipartisan support for a really robust conservation and recreation bill. Depending on how you look at it, many are saying it's the first major piece of legislation solely focused on outdoor recreation instead of being tucked into some other bill on a much broader topic. And a lot of it focuses on recreation on federal public lands, but there's a lot of policy prescriptions, and really, I think just trying to change the focus of federal government to focus more on how people engage with public lands generally is a good thing. And then the second piece, which is just as interesting in my mind, is the EDA, the Economic Development Administration, was reauthorized by Congress. And within it, EDA is responsible for allocating a lot of money, primarily at economic development initiatives. Historically, people focused on things like trails and outdoor recreation have had to make the case to EDA that that is a form of economic development and important to local economies. Now the EDA is saying in its reauthorization language, outdoor recreation is an economic development strategy. And so the threshold of people applying to the EDA or its commissions, like the Appalachian Regional Commission, don't have to make that argument anymore. They can just say, we're doing outdoor recreation, and EDA should be embracing that. So still a lot of time to see how that really plays out in funding, priorities, but it's good to have it as a piece of their considerations formally. And then also tucked in there is the creation of a Mid-Atlantic Regional Commission, which would cover portions of Pennsylvania that are currently outside of the Appalachian Regional Commission. As far as I can tell, there's no funding for that yet, but it creates the structure for potential funding. And I believe each of the regional commissions of EDA get about $40 million a year that they allocate. And the Appalachian Regional Commission has supported a lot of our partners in the Appalachian portion of Pennsylvania. So to have a counterpart commission covering other parts of Pennsylvania could be a great potential source of funding, particularly when the EDA is saying that outdoor recreation is now one of their priorities. So just wanted to point out there's a lot of good things happening at the federal level. Obviously, with the administration change, it'll be interesting to see how other policies shake out. But between the two of those, I think it can be a role for CONRAC just to pay attention to those and think about how they apply to DCNR and our work here in Pennsylvania. One more update, and then we can move to the committee updates. The Bureau of Forestry strategic plan. Some of you should have been on the distribution list from Emily saying that the strategic plan is now complete. If you recall, CONRAC had been heavily engaged in some of the regional meetings and reviewing drafts and providing feedback. Forestry took all those comments, from CONRAC, but many other stakeholders, incorporated them into the final version. It's being designed now, and then it will be released, I believe, in February, so very soon. So our role in terms of commenting on that and revising it is now concluded. But I think would be a great role for Meredith's Natural Resource Stewardship Committee or our other committees to look at some of the major findings and recommendations, and as Bureau of Forestry begins implementation, identify areas where we can elevate or support some of the findings there and things that they'll be working on. So I think with that, we can move to our committee updates, and we can start with Bob on outdoor recreation if you have anything to share.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do, as the committee, we did not meet is our traditional date of meeting the first Wednesday of January. We really didn't have anything to discuss. But there is important news, I think, that we've talked about now for almost a year. Next Thursday on January 30th will be a meeting in the Countersport area, a day-long meeting to begin the process of setting up an authority to address the North Central riding area. So that process will be kicking off next Thursday, and I'll have a report on that for the entire council at our next meeting. And in the interim, I am sure that the outdoor recreation group will be getting together to discuss that. That's what I have from the motorized side. Let me turn to my co-chair here, Gary, and do you have anything from your aspect?
Great, thank you. Marcus, oh, sorry.
Question,
Jerry.
Bob. Are you going to coordinate with the Pennsylvania Wildlife Planning team?
Jerry, there are about 55 people invited to the meeting, so I'm not sure who all those people are. I won't know.
Will Hunt, County Planning Director of Potter County, should be invited. He's involved with that.
He is attending, and he has actually been a part of the planning process, as well as PA Wilds will be represented.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I still serve on the PA Wildlife Planning team, but I'm not an officer.
Just a logistical thing. Janet Sweeney said she's looking for a link to join. So if you could send Janet or resend the link to Janet. Thanks. Marcus, oh, sorry. Yep. Marcus, I know you joined us just a few minutes late, but just wanted to recognize you're on, and thanks for joining us remotely. If you have an update on the Equity and Opportunity for All group, feel free to provide it. Otherwise, you can just introduce yourself.
Yeah, it sounds good. Good morning, everyone. Great to see the council virtually. Apologies for my delay. A little bit of difficulty getting into the office today, I guess with the cold weather and whatnot, but no report outs in regards to Equity Committee. We'll get a meeting on the calendar for early February to begin to develop some additional report outs and conversations in regards to everything that's going on with Arlene and Director Raglian for the outdoors. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Marcus. Meredith isn't able to join us today, but just giving a quick update on the Natural Resource Stewardship Group. Tracking the SCORP and its development obviously has been a focus there, and waiting for a draft of the SCORP to provide some review and input. And what are we anticipating in terms of when a draft of the SCORP might?
In the next few weeks. And I'll provide a little bit of an update on that as well.
Thank you. And then, as I said, I'm sure reviewing the Bureau of Forestry final strategic plan and identifying some goals to rally around in that will be something that group can focus on. Ephraim, anything from the State Park and Infrastructure Group?
Just like Marcus, we didn't have a chance to meet in December, but we'll be looking to get something on the calendar also for February. I was invited to participate on Pennsylvania Park and Forest Foundation's Advocacy Committee, and we met once with them and with Marcy here, and we'll be talking about how our committee from CONRAC can better integrate with some of their initiatives. So that will be really good for 2025. And then also what's, same as Natural Resources Committee, looking at the state, the Bureau of Forestry strategic plan to see where infrastructure needs might be outlined there and how we can help.
Excellent. Thanks, Ephraim. And then for my part with economic contributions, I think when we last met, it was the day the Bureau of Economic Analysis released its federal data. Just to remind you, what that data showed was that between 2022 and 2023, Pennsylvania's outdoor economy grew by 10% to about $19 billion, which is 2% of GDP. It's a little lower than some other states, but in part that's because Pennsylvania is a robust and dynamic economy, and some of the states that have a higher portion of GDP are very tourism focused. So not necessarily a bad thing, and our outdoor economy continues to outpace growth in other sectors.
Repeat the numbers.
$19 billion of economic impact. And that's 10% growth year over year. And then I think the job count was 168,000 jobs, which was 4,000 additional jobs from 2022 to 2023. So again, good employment growth. And those jobs generated $9 billion in wages. So the takeaway obviously is the work that the Office of Outdoor Recreation is doing continues to be very relevant. When those numbers came out, that the office organized a webinar to release them at the state level, and continues to leverage those data points with legislators and others. So the fortunate thing is that data comes out every year, so we'll be able to continue to track that growth over time. The other piece of work with the Office of Outdoor Recreation and then broadly on the outdoor economy is Elevate, which is all the work happening around the creation of an outdoor business alliance for Pennsylvania. Back in the fall, there was an event in Easton to launch the Elevate process. That process has continued with a lot of outreach to outdoor businesses. So I want to make another plug that if you go to elevateoutdoorspa.com, there's a survey that businesses or organizations that are nonprofits that interact with businesses can complete, and it gathers some information that we'll be using to help frame out what the Outdoor Business Alliance can do to provide meaningful service to outdoor businesses, what are gaps and what are great needs, and helps us just document outdoor businesses that are out there. So part of the Elevate process is creating mapping that shows the location of outdoor businesses in Pennsylvania. That's still a work in progress, and this will help fill in the gaps from that survey or through the survey. There'll also be a series of regional meetings. I think we're up to 11 or 12 across Pennsylvania to convene businesses. And so as soon as we have that list and the dates, we'll get that out to CONRAC members so you can attend the ones in your region or encourage businesses to attend. And we've, I think, done a good job of covering most geographies, which is why we're now up to 12. And those all happen in March. And
you said the meetings will be in March?
Yeah.
Can we get a list?
Yep, as soon as it's finalized. I know Nathan and his team are working on the logistics for that. So needless to say, a lot of work going on in that space. We can keep on, reinforcing it through CONRAC and participating wherever possible. And I think that's it for me. Any questions on any of those focus group updates or my other updates in the council report? Oh, Bob?
So I said not necessarily on your report, but I would like to take the opportunity to commend the Polar Vortex and also give honorable mention to Lake Effect. It's been a nice year so far for much of the Commonwealth, so I want to thank you.
Is it ever too cold for snowmobiling? Okay,
Oh,
I figured that
come
was the
on.
answer, but
But what's going to happen is Pennsylvania prepared, or Harrisburg prepared, and all that snow melt on the Susquehanna and ice, solid ice, creates a jam somewhere down here. Harrisburg's going to get flooded.
It's happened before, right?
Hopefully not.
I think they just dynamite it out, right? They just
You have to get the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission to agree, though.
There you go. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. We'll move on to our presentations, and we'll introduce Marcy Mowry from the Pennsylvania Parks and Forest Foundation. Marcy's obviously one of DCNR's strongest partners and a friend of CONRAC, so we're happy to have her here.
And it's wonderful to be here. I haven't been here in person for quite a while, so it's nice to see everybody's face. So as Ara brings up my presentation, I'll just give it a sec. I did put some things out over here that I would encourage you to pick up. I will not be staying until the very end. As Silas said, I'm heading up to State College for the forestry meeting.
Oh.
So do grab some of those as you're able. It's coming, I promise. As we wait, I will say that the Pennsylvania Parks and Forest Foundation turned 25 last year. So we were pretty excited about that, and congratulations to DCNR, who will be celebrating their 30th anniversary this year.
Oh, wow.
Lots to be celebrating, and okay, there we are. Just in case you're not familiar with the Pennsylvania Parks and Forest Foundation, we are the nonprofit partner for state parks and state forests. We'll see if I can get this to work. It's not. Maybe you can advance it for me. And our mission is to inspire steward, if you can move it forward, is to inspire stewardship of Pennsylvania state parks and state forests. And one of our, 5 years ago, we did a strategic plan, and one of the key elements of that plan was to ensure a place and an experience for everyone in the outdoors. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. If you could advance another. Currently, the foundation has 45 friends groups and 4 associate groups, including now the Pennsylvania State Park Society is now under our affiliate umbrella. We manage 190 accounts for parks, forests, friends groups, and projects. And we have a needs list that we help to provide funding for projects in state parks and state forests. And we always say that DCNR and the state provide the cake, and we help to provide the icing on the cake. And isn't iced cake so much better? So,
yes.
This is the geographic distribution of our friends groups. Number of them are with complexes. So while we only have 45 groups, some of them are representing multiple parks, and we're also in several forests. We added 3 groups last year: Tyler State Park, Chapman State Park, and we just added Promised Land State Park as friends groups as well. Yep.
On the previous slide.
If you could back up a second.
I don't see any in Lycoming County or Tioga County. Why?
In order for there to be a friends group, there has to be a population of people that are willing to be a friend, as well as interest in a state park or a state forest manager. So in some cases, it's hard to recruit the required board of directors for the friends group. And in that case, we're actually looking at having a stewardship program in those areas where we don't have the traditional format for a friends group. We also know that how people participate in things is continuing to change. So we're trying to stay on top of that. So there might be, some stewards in places like in the Forbes State Forest, we have stewards, and we have an active volunteer group, but they're not a friends group. So switching to our accessibility work, this map, which is very hard to read, shows over the past decade the work that we've been doing to be more inclusive in the adapting equipment, providing equipment, putting in docks, purchasing adaptive bicycles, etc., across Pennsylvania. Most recently, we worked with the PA Wilds to do the color correcting viewfinders, and I'll pass this around. And here's an article that we did in the Fish and Boat Commission magazine about it, and there's some extra copies up there because it shows you the difference. So the color correcting viewfinders enable somebody with color blindness to view through the finders and see what somebody without color blindness would see. So you think about these are all placed in the PA Wild. So you think about the fall foliage, and if you've never seen it, it's pretty amazing. We are currently at Chapman State Park. Our brand new friends group recruited a donor who is in the process of donating $40,000 to put in our most recent Easy Dock. An Easy Dock is an accessible launch that balances the canoe or kayak, has a transfer platform, and I'll show you a picture, and allows people of all abilities to get into and out of a kayak. Our closest one is here at Little Buffalo. Our first one was at Point State Park, and there was a flash flood, and it is probably somewhere down in Louisiana. It floated away, which was very sad because they're not inexpensive. Literally, when we put those in, it's a build it and they will come, because people have traveled quite a far distance in order to utilize them. So we're doing a lot of different things. We try to keep the map updated and coordinate with DCNR on their map as well. So if you could progress. So a couple of things there. Jim Grace is up there in the upper right-hand corner, looking through the color correcting viewfinders at Leonard Harrison State Park. In the middle picture, the Friends of Cook Forest put in a sensory trail. So it is a paved trail. It has guide ropes for people that have visual challenges, and it's in Braille as well as print letter. So trying to invite a different experience. On the left, you'll see one of the launches, stabilizing a kayak. And then the bottom left corner is at Little Buffalo State Park. We recently unveiled a inclusive playground. And that was quite a learning experience for us. We wanted to have a surface that was, easy for different mobility devices to roll on. The manufacturer of the playground was of little use. We will not use them again. Won't tell you who they are, but we won't use them again. But we were able to find somebody to help us develop the footprint for a poured rubber surface, which it's very expensive. So the cost of a playground really goes up with that. We were very excited. We did the unveiling. There's a lot of different elements for people to interact with. And then we found out that we needed to have some sort of fencing around it because children on that have neurodivergent sometimes tend to move. And so we are looking at how to create something that's interactive and feels like a part of the play system as opposed to feeling like a containment. So it's all a learning experience. And we work with the Center for Independent Living, and we work with other groups because we don't pretend to be experts on this. And there are a lot of people that have the knowledge space that they can share so we can ensure the work that we're doing truly is accessible. I talk about inclusion, and that being that we're really looking at how do we invite people in? How do we let them know that, these parks and forests, these spaces are welcoming to them? And we've done some events. The one on the left, picture on the left, is we did an adaptive sports day at Gifford Pinchot State Park. And we had different adaptive equipment available for people to try. And we have been, on the right, we've been providing transportation assistance to YMCAs for senior programming, to local school districts that might not have the funding, to Latino centers for programming in state parks and state forests. And transportation is a barrier. So if we can remove that barrier, and our requirement is that it can't just be we're popping out for a visit and we're going to go to the beach. It has to be that you're working with the educator at the state park, and it could be for recreation, leadership, environmental education, or skills development. We also have been focusing with DCNR on hosting women events. And these are literally, when you open the registration, they close within several hours. They fill up every time. This was Women in the Big Woods at French Creek State Park. Our age range at this event was 23 to 84.
Oh.
Yeah. And it was a lot of fun. It was a 3-day, 2-night event. So, we try to be inclusive in our communication. We've had an ongoing Spanish language radio program with Albright University this will be our 3rd year. It's the 3rd Friday of the month. This most recent was focus. We had Mike Piaskowski in to talk about the Pennsylvania Outdoor Corps, because they have a Corps crew there in the Reading area, Berks County. We are working with Margarita. She's down there in the lower right-hand corner, to launch a Spanish language cable television program talking about opportunities in state parks and state forest. We do a lot of infographics there on the left. When we do an infographic, we talk to Parks and Forests and say, what do you want visitors to know? How can we help visitors understand etiquette, or how to navigate in a park or forest? And whenever we develop any information, we have it translated into Spanish as well. And we are looking at other languages because we know we have a lot of visitors that speak a variety of languages. Okay. Don't mind forward. We are on Meetup. We were looking at how do we let people know, there's so many different avenues for where people get their information. It is challenging, but we have found that our Meetup presence is growing. And, if people are looking for, hey, I want to take a hike, but I don't know what to do or where to go, we can put that information up there. And that's what we found with these women events. That's one of the reasons that the women have been participating is some women have fear about being in the outdoors, and they're looking for other women to go out with. And so there was a lot of number exchanging and planning ahead for getting together again, because they were building that pot of people that they could, experience the outdoors in a safe and comfortable way. We've been doing videos. There's a series of videos that we did on Leave No Trace, all in Spanish. We had 7 different speakers that interpreted each principle in their own way. And it wasn't about, these are the rules of being in the outdoors. It's like, how can this rule help you have a better and more positive experience? We've done several videos on the value of being in the outdoors, and we have English and Spanish versions of both of those as well. So really trying to provide people with the tools to understand the importance of being outdoors, as well as how to navigate being in the outdoors, how to explore a place. We do something called the Insider's View, and I'll pass these around. We're asking our friends groups, and we talk with the educators in state parks, saying, if somebody's visiting your park or your forest and they've never been there before, where do they start? And the Insider View says, what's the best view? What's the best family-friendly hike? Where can you go grab a bite to eat afterwards? And then we have these translated, and they're available on our website. Yes. Sarah. We have an IDEA committee, Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access. We meet on a monthly basis, and we have goals. And one of the goals is to expand corporate volunteerism in state parks and state forests. And we did 6 corporate volunteer days last year. We had 2 volunteer days with Deloitte. And what this does is it introduces people who may not otherwise have had an experience in a park or a forest, introduces them to the place, builds their comfort level. We have been out with Deloitte multiple years, and some of the folks say, now I visit that park on a regular basis. I didn't know it existed before. My family and my friends, we go there. So it's a great way to get people out, help them feel comfortable in place. We are a significant partner in the Pennsylvania Conservation Heritage Project. Initially, that project was developed to celebrate the legacy of Maurice Goddard, and it has morphed into telling the stories about the people, places, and events that shaped the conservation heritage of Pennsylvania. Initially started out with a traditional definition of what conservation was, and it has grown to be more inclusive in that definition to tell more stories and to help tell the untold stories. And we've been talking with Claire Jantz here, because I know a number of groups have been doing untold stories, to really, people need to see themselves in that conservation history, and we're trying to help people see themselves. So I'll pass these cards around. I'm going to start your way. There are some cards that will lead you to the Conservation Heritage website. We don't pretend to know all of the conservation heritage stories. There is a page on that website. If you scan the QR code, you can go, and there's a place where you can say, hey, I know a story that I think you should capture, and we'll continue to try to capture them. I would be remiss in saying that there is recently been a book released called The Cradle of Conservation by Alan Dietrich Ward. He's doing talks all around Pennsylvania about the book. It really is an inclusive look at conservation history in Pennsylvania. It's available on our website. But, if you go to the Conservation Heritage website, you'll see where he's speaking, or if you're interested in having him speak to your group, reach out to us. We're helping to coordinate his schedule. I'll pass it around so you can look at it, but I do need it back because I have to take it to my next meeting.
Marcy, doesn't Alan have a talk at Midtown Scholar coming up with, and Cindy's participating in?
He does. I believe it's in March. Yeah. And Secretary Dunn and Dr. Alan Dietrich Ward will be talking about conservation history in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so maybe we can send a couple dates that Alan's out and about to CONRAC members, because it really is worth hearing Alan speak if you can. It's excellent.
Yes, yes. And we're trying to get we're doing it in Williamsport, Jerry. So we'll have one a little closer to you. Okay. We do a lot of advocacy. As Ephraim said, he's on our advocacy committee, and part of that advocacy, relates to our IDEA work, because we want to make sure that, that any legislation that passes or the budget passes, there is provisions to make sure that our parks and forests continue to be inclusive and equitable. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we don't do this alone. We work in partnership with other organizations, the Center for Land Use, the Center for Independent Living. We are working with individuals with abilities in motion. We're going to be placing our first action track chair. That is not what you see in this picture. That's another chair that we're testing. That action track chair will be at Lackawanna State Park. So an action track chair is a motorized wheelchair that is able to go onto the trails. And we worked with the park to identify trails, and we're in the process of building the loan agreement because it will be available for free loan. And we will have chair hosts to help people who are looking to borrow the chair, then to check the chair back in. It'll be stored in the lobby of the Lackawanna State Park office so that it is there also for people to learn about. The second chair that we'll probably be doing is the one that you see here. It's a little bit different. We'll have that in another park, and we'll be getting feedback because they have pros and cons for each chair. And one of our board members is a wheelchair user, and he went to there was like a test where there were a lot of different chairs, and some of them he found easier to use with his abilities, and others were really challenging. So we want to make sure that we have a variety of options so that people can choose what's going to work best for them. So, and that's the dock that floated down the Ohio River. Okay. So overall, with PPFF, where we're going, we continue to maintain our needs list, and there is a lot of items on the needs list that relate to inclusion and accessibility in parks and forests. We are working with the Pennsylvania Outdoor Corps. We helped with the strategic planning process last year. One of the things is to really get into more underserved areas. So we're in the process of releasing an RFP for a workforce analysis that will inform a marketing plan. So if you know of any businesses that might want to receive that RFP, it will be going out at the end of this week. Please let me know. And then the marketing plan will hopefully be in place by the end of the year to better extend the reach of recruitment and the expansion of the Outdoor Corps. We're in the process of identifying more accessible recreation that we can put into place. We are doing a lot of invasive species and habitat restoration. One of the ones that we're super excited about is some restoration for grouse up on Shade Mountain that is above the line at which not Lyme disease, West Nile virus can sustain. And they're already seeing grouse. This is the third year, so we're pretty excited about that. As I mentioned, we're trying to expand our volunteerism. And we're also trying to expand our advocacy board. So we're super excited that Ephraim joined us, but we're also looking for other people because there's a lot of pieces of legislation that could adversely impact our parks and forests that are starting to stir already. So, questions?
Marcy, would you, I'd like to connect with you about some potential other volunteers that we could find. But also, could you talk a little more about the canoe and kayak access work you're doing and where?
Yeah, they're not inexpensive. So the one that we're putting up in Chapman is $40,000. And that's, and sometimes it needs additional site work. It depends on the location that it's going. And then we also want to make sure that there is an accessible restroom nearby so that somebody that's utilizing the canoe or kayak launch can change out of wet clothing because that could lead to chafing and sores. And then ample parking. Beltsville has one. We, trying to think where all we placed them. Little Buffalo, Laurel Hill. A modified version was put in at Canoe Creek by the Friends group there. I have to, I'll send you the map, Jerry, and it'll tell you.
And I may send you some ideas.
Okay, yes. I mean, they're very popular. And, you know, when we put the one in Pittsburgh, and I'll probably cry when I tell you the story, there was a woman who called and she said, I haven't been able to be on the water in 15 years. I had back surgery and I have balance issues. She goes, you've brought that back to me. And, you know, that's why you do it. Universal design is good for everybody. And I'm sure you'll be talking about that. We all have a point in our lives where we may have an injury, an illness that prevents us from doing the things that we may want to do or normally do. And this is a way to make sure that everybody has access. I thought,
Marcy?
Sarah, you look like you have to say something.
We also have Janet online at,
Yeah.
had her hand raised. Janet.
Janet, where
Well,
are you?
I'm in my office, sorry. Marcy, not a question, but I wanted to make you aware of a program that PEC is, Pennsylvania Organization for Watersheds and Rivers, that is managed by PEC. It's our statewide waterway access mini grant program. And we've provided up to there, it's a mini grant program that's up to $30,000 and it's for non-motorized access to Pennsylvania waterways. And I think you guys would be perfect, you know, the facility at Beltsville, you guys would be a perfect applicant for, if you're working with other state parks and state forests to go after this grant program to help you offset the cost of, you know, putting in these accessible launches. So just keep that in mind. Maybe offline, I can send you some information about that. And
That would be wonderful.
I also, yeah, anyone else too on Conrac, Jerry, it sounds like you're interested as well. Just I can send stuff to the group. And I also wanted to let you know that we have also worked with Individual Abilities in Motion and another organization called My Center for Independent Living. They're another really good resource, and MySIL is working currently with Lackawanna, the director of parks at Lackawanna in Lackawanna County, to do assessments of the park system and how accessible they are for people with disabilities. So that might be another potential partner for you guys. So just wanted to throw that
Excellent.
out there.
Yes, thank you. We actually had trained staff on doing the accessibility assessments, and we did them here in central Pennsylvania. You know, I won't say what park it is. Like they have the accessible campsite where if you wheel too close to the campfire ring, you're going over the cliff.
Oh,
You know? So like there are things where we can have improvements, and it's helpful if we can offer that feedback from a knowledge base.
Marcy, some of your Spanish language videos seems like there's a lot of potential there. And just in the screenshot you showed, there wasn't a ton of viewership on them. Is it something that you've also provided to the state parks, or do the state parks help to? I'm thinking specifically in our area, we have a lot of different languages used in our parks that come from New York City or out of state, or from all over. Is this something that the parks also help to share or could help to share?
They could help to share. We sent it out to parks. Park Region 4 education coordinator was involved in the production, and you'll see that there were some people in uniform. So there were state parks was involved, but it's a matter of getting them to use it. We are in the process of writing some articles for Spanish language magazines about that, and we'll be featuring the Principles to Leave No Trace as part of the Berks County television program that we do. Yeah, it's unfortunate. We've done a lot of really good videos. We did one on quiet that I'd highly recommend that you view. It looks at the role of having spaces where there is quiet for our mental health. We interviewed Dr. Peter Newman and Dr. Josh Smith, both from Penn State at the time. Neither of them are at Penn State now, to really look at it from the science behind it. And I would say that's part of access work and inclusion work as well, because being able to get away from the constant noise is very important. Jerry?
Just to point out, our Susquehanna Greenway Partnership sponsors kayak floats and canoe floats. Every one last year was sold out, over 100 people. And we just didn't have the capability to arrange all the shuttle and do a greater number each than that. But so I think we would like to connect with you about a lot of those events. Those were on the Susquehanna. That's not to say couldn't broaden that.
Yeah. And I'm also serve on the Susquehanna River Trail Association board, so we did help with some of those as SRTA. Yep. Any other questions? I want to be mindful of other presenters' time.
Hesitant to ask this question because I'm sure it could be another hour's presentation, but just curious how you are looking at, if you're successful in drawing people to state parks because they're more accessible, or you're, encouraging groups of people that may in the past not have had an interest, not felt welcome on state lands, and now they are. How are you seeing that jive with the people who historically have used state parks and sort of that clash of maybe cultures or expectations? I know in York County, we see that play out sometimes with pushback from traditional park users in, more people coming to their park. And we try locally to overcome that by talking about all the positive reasons why, our parks should be accessible. We should be welcoming as many people as want to come, that there's benefits for local businesses. Are you seeing those kinds of issues pop up statewide as you welcome new people to state parks, or is that not so much an issue everywhere?
We have seen it. We've seen it in some locations. It's been conversations that we've had, and there's this misguided idea that misbehavior is always from the new visitors. And my husband and I serve as campground hosts, and I can guarantee you that not all the misbehavior is from new visitors. The biggest pushback we get from people are like, I've been camping here for 40 years. Don't tell me what to do. Sorry, but that tarp that's tied to the tops of the trees in this heavy rain is going to come down on you. Don't tell me what to do. So, I think it's really important, and I've had this conversation with DCNR, as campground hosts are like, for many people, if you're camping, that's the only quote unquote staff that you're coming into contact with, that we make sure that our campground hosts are modeling welcoming behavior, and that we provide them with the skill sets that they need to model welcoming behavior, and also to notice if anything might be going awry, and so that they can communicate that to the management in the park. And I think it behooves all of us to educate people that there are value in bringing in new users, that, these are available to all citizens and visitors alike. And that if we want to have them for future generations, we need everybody to be using them, because we need everybody to be vocal supporters of these places in the landscape.
Absolutely. Marcy,
welcome
being with us. And if people joined us online and aren't council members but have a question for Marcy, feel free to send it to us in the chat, and we can pass that along to Marcy and hopefully get you a response. And with that, I think we'll turn to Alex and welcome him to the front of the room for his presentation.
All right. Well, first, let me thank you again for allowing me the opportunity to be here and participate in this. That was a great presentation, Marcy. Thank you. I'm sure we'll be talking in the future. So go to the second slide, please. Yep, one more. All the way up. There, oh, one more. Next one. Okay, that's good. So I'm Alex Pilkington. Like I said, I'm with the I'm Able Foundation. I'm the CEO. For those who may know, the I'm Able Foundation is synonymous with the person Chris Kegg, who is the founder. He founded the organization 18 years ago. For those who really know Chris, he has not been defined by his condition and his challenges. As of today, though, his condition has advanced. Sir. Thank you. So for those who really know Chris, his condition has advanced. So he's dealing with that on a personal level. A year ago, we did move him into the Chief Motivation Officer role. So advanced, thanks. All right. So as I said, Chris Kegg is the founder of the foundation in 2007. Our mission is to remove barriers that keep people with disabilities on the sidelines, so they get them up, get them active. The barriers can be financial, physical, or educational wise. Some of the things that the I'm Able does is provide adaptive equipment grants. Chris does have a saying that being disabled is not cheap. We do provide group fitness programs and events. So programming is pretty common. Events, we do hold multi-sport races, triathlons, duathlons, CrossFit adaptive kind of workout competitions. So there's a competitive aspect there. We also provide programming for veterans. Since both Chris and I are veterans, it's near and dear to our hearts. So we provide that. And advocacy and community education is to me is a requirement for what we do. My 3 years at the foundation, I had really opened my eyes to understanding that there's a lot of people who don't know the resources are available to them, whether they're financial or programming or what have you. So this is an important part of being in this job. Next slide, please. So we do have some partnerships, as you can see, Wounded Warrior, Move United, Robert Irvine, USA Triathlons with the Paris Series. That's a newly one happening. We're working on a few other ones. It's about creating those partnerships, right, where we can communicate. I never want to be a foundation that says no, right? It's like we don't have it, but we know somebody that we can put you in touch with. Thank you. This is a slide of one of our I'm Fit classes. There's people of all ages from 4 years old up to, we've had some people up to in their late 80s. So all with IDD, intellectual developmental disabilities, physical disabilities. It's truly inclusive. And you can see Chris there is in the middle. So that program is held two times a week. And we are averaging about 45 people per class. So that's a lot. It's a huge attendance. We also have a partnership I didn't mention there with Special Olympics. We hold two nights of programming with them as well. So I heard, being outside has many, many health benefits. I love being outside myself, right? It improves those mental health aspect, the ability to cope with things, depression, stress and anxiety, right? So when you have a disability, you still have those challenges, but they tend to be a bit more amplified, right? So the other aspect is isolationism, right? So being disabled, especially if I've seen with new people who are newly disabled, right? There's a cycle that they go through, and isolationism is just kind of immediate. It is a real thing. Really you're evaluating, where do I go from here, right? Not even thinking about where's my resources. So you can see some of the people in this picture. Maya in the upper right-hand corner, young girl, she's nonverbal. She was one of our grant recipients. So there's another, you can see in the lower left-hand corner, there's a lot of equipment on that hand cycle, right? That person has never ridden a bike before in their life, right? Can you just imagine that? So, and then we have a gentleman, I think his name is Rick, upper left, newly adaptive athlete, if you will. So lost his leg in a car accident. So being outdoors, supports, just like it does with able body, it's just as important for people with different abilities. Next slide. So one of the things that is important to us is person first language, right? And it's been a learning curve, right? Even just at the foundation, right? It's about not putting the disability before the person, right? It's that person is, you know, a wheelchair user instead of someone who's in a wheelchair, or, right? We use the word adaptive in the foundation, but a person with a disability is another term we use. You can see two people there. The person in the upper right-hand corner, that's Jose. He is one of our new trainers. He was shot in the chest several years ago, has been in a chair ever since. He's an absolute fantastic trainer for several of our programs. The lady he's fist bumping is one of our personal trainers, who is very, very well educated in the specifics of adaptive training. And then Beth, lower right-hand corner, quad amputee from strep throat, is one of our grant recipients, has competed in the CrossFit Games. So these people are living their lives to the fullest, and that's an expectation that we all should have. Next slide, please. Okay, now, so there's a lot in this slide. Sir, someone have a question? So, right, there's physical awareness and economic barriers, and there's a lot here, right? We talked about trails and pathways. You know, we've seen a lot in our areas that trail width. So adaptive hand cycles are roughly 36 to 42 inches wide at the front tires. There are a number of trails where you cannot pass two hand cycles on the same trail. There are numerous trails where, especially rail trails, where they're elevated and you have a cliff on both sides. Those are real things, right? Besides the fact the equipment is incredibly expensive, an adaptive hand cycle for a child can be about $3,000 plus. Adaptive hand cycles, depending on the type of level of quality, can go up to $80,000. They're averaging about $12,000 to $22,000. We provide grants. We also connect other people with other organizations, provide grants to get that equipment. So facilities and infrastructure, I know Marcy had mentioned this. It's really, if you ever have an opportunity to borrow somebody's chair sometime, go to the park and see what it's like. I shared one time where there was this a park in Reading where it's a basketball and it says it's adaptive, disabled friendly. The gate to get on the basketball court is 24 inches. So there's no way you're getting a chair through that, pickleball or what have you. So it's when you put yourself in that perspective and you start to see things a bit differently, right? So equipment limitations, as we said there, the facilities, like if you're going across a bridge, if it's a nature center, they tend to have steps to go to the viewing areas. So these little things that add up that will keep somebody in their house and not able to leave. Lack of information. I hear a lot of great, information that's being out there already, but it's what's available. How do I access it? Does the picture look like someone who looks like me, right? That's your first visual piece, right? Limited representation. When we were getting ready to hire a trainer, it was very important to me to have somebody who represents the community that we're trying to serve. They don't want me in front of them training them, right? Because they want to, those folks who attend our programming is looking for someone who they can look up to and say, hey, you know what, they've done it, right? Or they understand where I'm coming from. And any human wants that connection. And the other part of it is, and like I said, is the representation in marketing materials. And we've had some challenges with this as well early on. It's when someone has a different ability and they look at a marketing piece or website, they are going to look for someone who represents them, right? Whether they're in a chair or they're crutches or what have you. And then they're going to continue to read. They're going to look at what that material has in there, the content that says, okay, I'm going to be safe in this environment, right? If I have to, is my dignity protected, right? I don't want to have to roll uphill to a bathroom, right, from the landing dock, because that might be difficult. Changing is different. Putting your attachment on, right? I've seen where you'd have to take off one of your a leg and put on a different leg, right? People want that dignity just like we do. So economic barriers, right? People with disabilities tend to have a bit more on the higher unemployment rate, higher medical bills, less disposable cash income, right? So all of those things matter. Providing free and access to equipment is a start. Transportation costs, I know was mentioned as well. It's a simple little thing like, hey, I want to go to the park, jump on the bus and go. Well, where do I put my chair? How do I get my hand cycle there, right? All of those questions. So, slide. This is one of the 2 success stories that I wanted to share with you. So Ricky Wilson, we provided him with a grant for about $9,000 for a bike. You can read through there, but basically, mom thought life was over, right? Son had a challenge. They had just started bike riding, and your life gets turned upside down. Now what, right? So since he was able to receive the grant coming to us, they've gotten back out cycling. There is a normalcy back to their life, right? She accredits the bike and I'm able for saving the life of her child. And it's that, I wish that was the only story I could share like that, but it's not. You can go to the next slide if you like. So Jared Smith also, another success story for us, provided him with a very expensive mountain bike. This gentleman would mountain bike all over the East Coast. Great, actually competed in many races. Wound up having a challenge unexpectedly and thought that his life was over. And he's been a significant part of the foundation, leading bikes, leading rides and such like that. So finding that new purpose, right? When you are facing that type of a condition or a challenge, you really start to, question, like, what is my purpose now, right? And humans need a purpose to drive. Next, please. So just some of the ways that, I'm able is leading our mission, right, to remove those barriers for people with disabilities. Whether it's providing them equipment, we organize, outdoor, indoor, inclusive and exclusive events. As I mentioned, adaptive sports, where like Got the Nerve, our triathlon, I'm Able Games, cycling races, rope courses, kayaking. So I can tell you personal experience of kayaking, trying to transfer somebody from one to the other. The reality of that too is that there's a risk for an organization to transfer people, right? And while it's out of the goodness of our heart, right, a lot of times, there's training that has to be done. We have to have qualified people. We have to make sure that, all of our ducks in a row, that person is safe, but it's being transferred. We're also protected. So building awareness and education, this is an important part of this role to how do we increase that awareness, right? Connecting, I call it a disabled ecosystem, right? That's when we want something, we go on the computer, we find it, and we know we don't consider a lot of the things, we just go do it. Have a different ability, person with a disability, it's a lot different. So building that ecosystem that they can start to navigate more easily, whatever their condition is, enriches their life. So increasing representation, like I said, we are actively hiring people with different abilities, right? So with representation, we are very conscious about our marketing materials. I'll give you an example. 2 years ago, we were having a race event and we was getting ready to storm. So we had a big tent up and I put the tent in the grass and I stuck the tent, down because I knew the storm was going to come. 2 people in a chair come to me and they said, do you know how difficult it is to wheel my chair through to get to the tent? And it's just that simple thing, right? But So those are, it's important to have that representation. We also utilizing storytelling. So our board chair, whose daughter has gone through our program, is 12 years old, wound up losing her leg. This is about 12 years ago. Wanted to take her own life, got connected with the foundation. She's thriving now. She tells her story. Jose is telling his story. So it's important that people share the stories and they have a platform for it. Removing financial barriers, like I said, we provide grants. We put people in touch. If we can't provide a grant or the complete cost of the equipment, we provide access to other organizations. Move United is one of them for sure. And then fundraising events. So our bash, we have one of our major fundraising events this year. Every year is called the Bash, and it's a fantastic event. Last year was attended by over 600 people. But the reason I bring this up is that we bring all of our equipment into the location where we have the Bash, and we allow people to try our equipment. We're gonna have a wheelchair basketball game this year. So the old wheelchair basketball or pickleball, we'll do the goggles that have the Vaseline on them or they're blacked out, so you can see what it's like being visually impaired. Right? It's about putting folks in that position to at least begin to understand what it's like, and you look at the world a little bit differently, right? And then also partnering with organizations. We want to do it all. We can't do it all, but again, like I said, I want to be that connector for people who come to us, so we can build out that ecosystem and provide them access, right? If we can't provide it. Next. So, opportunities for collaboration. I heard a lot of great things from Marcy and her slide there, but infrastructure and improvements. I think that's pretty much, everybody knows there's challenges there. Policy development, I think that's probably a larger challenge in some cases, right? But whether it's an inclusion in advisory councils, provide feedback on testing, equipment or trail systems or something like that. I guess what I'm trying to say without reading every word on this slide is, we want to be a partner and to you guys, to the people of Pennsylvania, to enable accessibility. And I think that's an important part. So we are just opening ourselves up to how do we be there to provide knowledge, experience, hands, right, if you will. So next. So next couple of slides, I think everybody has a slide deck. We could just kind of go through there. So these are just examples of Virginia and Georgia who are starting to provide some, whether it's equipment or access and such like that. Right. And some pictures. That track chair on the right, Chris used to have one of those. I'll tell you what, that is a lot of fun to go through the snow. Just an FYI, I think everybody should have one. Next, please. All right, so Virginia, they're providing track chairs as well. Okay. All right, so this is just some of the pictures, right? Most of these people are, actually they all are grant recipients. Chris is in the upper right-hand corner. We have a gentleman who plays sled hockey. The person there, you see the mom and the son, that was one of my very first, we provide demo days, right? Where we bring our adaptive equipment out, whether we work with a company, an organization, whomever, just to demonstrate that we have this equipment and then the channel, the path to go forward to get them. So I was at the foundation about 6 months. We had this demo day, and this gentleman here, Josh, nonverbal, he's got some other physical challenges, and that's his mom, Diane. And that was a bike that you could roll his chair up on, and mom could pedal. And I have never, we'll call it, cried so much at a position in my life. When you see somebody like that and gets the wind in their hair, and they've never been on a bike before, right? The things we take for granted as a kid all the way up, that was tough. I love that kid. So everybody's a great experience there. So yeah, there's a lot going on. So any other questions? Any questions I can answer? Sir?
What was mom's reaction to the story you just told about the young man?
Well, yeah, she was crying. Yeah, she was, it was like tears of joy, right? There was tears of a lot of things that are going on. Just the way he laughed, right? It was heart-wrenching, but it's absolutely, one of the highest points of, I think, their lives.
Thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Question.
Any other questions?
Yes, this is Rocco
Yes.
Alloy. I'm wondering if we could be sent the didactic part of this presentation. The reason for that, the reason I'm asking is I also sit as president of the Boating Advisory Board for Pennsylvania Fish and Boats. I'm seeing a few things here that I need to look at a little bit more. And I really enjoyed the program, and I certainly compliment you on the work you have done. But if there's a way to get this to me electronically or however, I would certainly appreciate it.
Okay, I have,
Yep.
sure it can be distributed.
Yep, we have a copy of it, and we'll make sure you get it, Rocco, and all the Conrec members will get a copy.
Okay.
Thank you.
My contact information is, you're welcome, Rocco. My contact information is on the last page too, so feel free to reach out.
Alex, can you just, you might have said at the beginning, I missed it, the footprint of the foundation's work? Because I know you're active in Pennsylvania. You had some other states in there. How far does your work reach?
Yes, so we do, excuse me, we do provide grants from Maryland to New York.
Okay.
Right? We are registered to solicit in those states. We are actively working to expand our Got the Nerve events to other states as well. There's people who want to compete with the different abilities. So, but primarily we are working in Pennsylvania from a programming perspective. We do have our veteran initiative or veteran program called Operationally from the Front is also in an expansion phase, and we're building that out a bit more. So that might go a little bit beyond. Yep.
And your funding, is it mostly private donations, or do you receive some public funding for your programming?
Great question. So the majority of our funding as of today comes from individual contributors and then corporations and such like that. We are actively working to develop revenue diversification, and we do want to go for public funding. So that is on our target, our strategic plan as far as going in that direction.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Thanks, Alex. Really great presentation. Thank you for being here. I was curious, so you mentioned that you have a few individuals, probably more than that, who serve as mentors and
Yes.
and leaders and role models. And so you said that this gives them purpose and meaning, but I imagine it also can be challenging. And so are there support systems for individuals who serve in these mentorship roles so that they can, continue to do this work, but also get the care, the self-care they need
Right.
To continue to be leaders and mentors?
Right. So we just implemented a leadership program for our I'm Fitters. We call them the I'm Fitters, right, this past year. And we've elevated a few people who have really embraced and shown within the program to we'll call them assistant trainers. One of them is a nonverbal, right? So one of the things we do there is, it's been a learning experience, right? So what are their needs, right? How do they feel? Are they emotionally impacted if something doesn't go their way, right? So we have conversations regularly with their parents or caregivers to try to understand, in a typical environment, you just, hey, you're going to take on this job and do it, and best of luck, and you figure it out. And it doesn't work that way, right? So we work closely with them, their parents, to try to understand where they are, so we can manage daily, if you will, right? So our veterans, we have this program called Battle Buddies. So it's a two-part program. We have Battle Buddies, which is a veteran, an able-bodied, can be a disabled veteran person that pairs with one of our IM fitters. And that is a mentor, based relationship, physical-based relationship, right? Mentoring, physical-based. And they have like a 12-week workout program. That we haven't seen any need at this point for counseling, if you will, from the veteran side. I know the veterans, so I touch base with them regularly, especially as we're expanding our operations. So that's really, hopefully that answers your question, but.
It does. It sounds like you have the leadership, development that I think is so important to this process. So that's great. Thank you.
Yep. Yes. It's interesting. So one of the other stories is we have this young man, John, who was I think he was 14, but when he was 10, he's nonverbal. Other than that, you would really kind of look at him and not say there was a challenge, but he's got severe autism and such. Wouldn't get off the couch, video games all day, wouldn't participate in the family activities. Started coming to the foundation, started getting more involved. This is a young man who had a hard time picking up a gallon of milk. I can tell you now that he is pushing a 250-pound sled. He is absolutely engaged in his family. He goes out and grabs groceries, right? So he gets firewood. His dad said to me, his name is also John, that, he doesn't recognize his son anymore in a positive way, right? And that's great. He's one of our coaches who's and loves doing it. And he's taught us more than I think he knows. So, yep. Good.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other, Jerry?
Sir.
First, a comment. One of the things that I feel good about with my work as a county planning director was I was able to help get accessible public transit buses for our Williamsport area, now called River Valley Transit Authority. And every once in a while I see someone using that's disabled, and we get a lot of we have bike racks on the buses too, right. So a lot of people bicycling part of the way. Question. Do you see a lot of need for like Vietnam War veterans? I was in Vietnam, but like with chemical disabilities, because that's when they started doing a courageous chemical warfare.
Okay, so Agent Orange type things, not necessarily alcohol, right?
They still what?
Not necessarily alcohol.
Yeah.
Okay. So we do have, say, a small handful of Vietnam veterans that participate. I'm going to say 2. As far as what their particular condition is from a chemical related,
yeah,
I can't really say. I'm sure that, I served. We all know that there's things that happen that sometimes people don't know about.
Yes.
So I'm sure that they have their own challenges, but they've never enlightened me to them.
Do you, picking up again on that Vietnam experience, I have been disappointed by the lack of organized outreach to vets on some of those things. And I belong to a veterans organization, but still they're mostly doing social stuff.
Right.
Have some great food events and sips.
The dollar beer at the VFW, right?
Yeah, but still, there's so much more that needs to be done to help our disabled vets and particularly those with certain war inflicted things like the chemical warfare in Vietnam and other warfares.
Agreed. What we see a lot of is that money for disabled, visually disabled veterans is more plentiful than money for the hidden disabilities.
For what?
For hidden disabilities.
Oh,
Right? PTS, TBIs. You know, the values of the organization of both Chris and I is like, we don't care about whether we can see your disability or not, right? So that's the importance of being in an inclusive environment, inclusive organization. But the other challenges there is, you know, we're not medical based, but you have to be aware of what you're getting involved with so you can, again, provide the right level of interaction and care. Right. So this is important.
Picking up on the other thing, as I said, I worked to get the River Valley Transit Authority to do more with accessible buses. Are you reaching out to the transit organizations to make sure they're doing more accessibility?
We have not. We've had a conversation with the Reading Public Transportation about 18 months ago.
Yeah.
Kind of stemmed from Maya. She lives in Reading. We're in Wyomissing. So apparently there's a bridge over which is more than a bridge, I think, sometimes. But we have some people who come to programming from Reading, but they can't, they don't attend during the evening because the transportation, they don't drive, right? So they, for several reasons. So having conversations with the bus company in Reading to see, hey, can we get folks here? And they don't have, as far as I know, I think there was maybe one, they don't have wheelchair accessible bus.
Okay.
So, which is a barrier. But it's one of those things through our advocacy work that I would like to continue. We can't be our own barrier. And how do we change that? Any contacts you have from that perspective, I'd like to.
I'll give you a card.
Great.
Great.
Well, thank you, Alex, for the presentation, for all the work you're doing. If you do talk to Chris sometime soon, let him know Conrac is thinking of him.
Yes.
Many of us got to know him through the GORP process a couple years ago. So really appreciate everything you do. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we will now welcome Morgan to give DCNR's perspective on work the agency is doing.
Hello, good to see everybody. A lot of what I have to present today might be a little redundant and repetitive, which is a good thing. So I'm probably going to expand upon a couple specific sections within this presentation and maybe gloss over some other ones that we've heard a lot about today. So the presentation has an agenda of talking about DCNR's mission and strategic priorities. I'll focus more heavily on that right now, talking a little bit about adaptive and accessible experiences, the importance of accessible and adaptive outdoor experiences, and recent initiatives at DCNR such as physical improvements, inclusive programming and outreach education materials, funding equity, and community partner collaboration. Maybe I need a new glasses prescription. That one's a little far away. Let's see, good thing I printed it out. Well, I think a lot of people in this room are familiar with DCNR's mission and vision. Briefly, we're focusing on sustainable management, recreation and stewardship, state parks and forests, and we have 3 strategic priorities. One of them that's exceedingly relevant for today would be our diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging Mosaic initiative. And so I know that you've also received a presentation on Mosaic in the past, but one of the sort of pop-outs that we've got from our language in the Mosaic initiative is under our DEIB/EJ overarching goals in the second column there, and it reads, the Mosaic initiative assists bureaus via Mosaic liaisons and subcommittee engagement to evaluate accessibility of DCNR lands, educational programs, and signage for historically marginalized, underserved populations, including language access, cultural awareness, transportation services, and other needs. And so that is really the focus of how DCNR is looking at accessibility in this realm. We also are very aware of empowering individuals with disabilities and talking about accessible recreation opportunities, educational programs, community partnerships, and equitable access. So we've heard a lot about these specific things today, and I want to focus mostly on the geographic section. The physical, before I do that, the physical sense of accessibility is really important and one of the most I think discussed topics in this area. It's something that we hear and think a lot about when we hear the word accessibility. We're thinking about adaptive infrastructure and improvements, and those are the foundation of this work. Language and culture, we also were able to hear a lot about from Marcy, which I really was happy to hear. And we think a lot about signage, communication, trying to avoid things like jargon that could be exclusive to people that are not familiar with those terms or communication. And the one that I'm going to talk about as a member of the policy office at DCNR is going to be geographic accessibility. So we are thinking a lot about how people are physically able to access our outdoor spaces, whether that is at a trailhead and the grade of the trail, but also can they get there? What is the proximity? What are the transportation options? And what is the infrastructure like, meaning roads, trails, and public transit? This picture on the bottom right hand is of the Pocono Pony. That is a public transit bus option near the Delaware Water Gap. And they hook up a kayak rack to that bus in the summertime. And it is a form of public transit, which I think is very cool. And that area, especially near the Delaware Water Gap, near Kings Gap Park. We've spoken to park managers there that tell us that folks will take intercity buses like Greyhound from New York City and Philadelphia to that region. They will take a bus if they don't own a car, and then they might Uber to the park. And that is how people are getting there when there aren't better, more accessible, efficient options available to them. For myself, I don't own a car. I live in Philadelphia. I commute here on the Amtrak train, and geographic accessibility is a really big deal in Philadelphia. I don't have access to any of our DCNR lands unless I get a friend to give me a ride or lend me their car. So it's something that I think a lot about. I'm a big outdoor enthusiast. I hope that's obvious working here, but there's a lot of places that are inaccessible to me, and that's as a young, able-bodied white woman. So this slide, I think we really are getting it at this point, but the who can be anyone. It is everyone. Accessible infrastructure, adaptive recreation experiences help everybody, whether you have a long-term disability, whether you have an injury, sometimes anything that could be short-term. Any reason, everybody benefits, including businesses and local economies. It helps everyone's health, and it helps everybody's social, mental, and wellness, mental well-being, and quality of life. So at DCNR more specifically, we're thinking a lot about these physical improvements. We're funding a lot of projects through our large grants. This list of playgrounds were projects that were completed just last year in 2024. They were funded a few years ago, but this was just a few of the accessible and inclusive structures that were completed in 2024. There are more. It would have been an entire slide listing playgrounds around the Commonwealth, which is wonderful. We've got our colorblind viewfinders at Black Moshannon, as we heard about earlier, and there's a picture of them there in the middle. And then we also have universal access trails like the one at Clark Nature Preserve, and that's just one example. We're also considering inclusive programming, and that could be work from our environmental educators who do a fantastic job. It's the availability of adaptive recreation devices for borrow at different state parks, again, as Marcy mentioned. This also might look like accessible walk audits was a program we did here in the Rachel Carson building with staff at DCNR and DEP. And so we walked around Harrisburg a couple times. And then the Mosaic initiative also has comprehensive initiatives to help staff align with and engage in agency efforts in a way that embodies the spirit of true inclusion. And so it's about aligning those practices and those ideas across the agency. In the policy office especially, we also have a focus on connecting adults with the outdoors, older adults with that. And so we are working on a large toolkit that is in partnership with a few other agencies in the Commonwealth, such as the Aging Department of Aging. Thank you. I was like, Aging Agency is not correct. So the Department of Aging is working with us on that. And our community partner collaboration is a really important part of the work that we do. So our funding supports a lot of accessibility and adaptive recreation throughout the Commonwealth, as well as funding guidances and advancing accessibility, which could also include adaptive and inclusive environmental education. The funding equity work as well from our Bureau of Recreation Conservation funds a lot of equity specific programs and has staff that are very focused on that work, staff that are frequently analyzing the grant funding, possibly through environmental justice lenses and other equitably focused lenses to make sure that those resources are being distributed to groups that need them the most. DCNR also leads an interagency funding equity work group for Commonwealth employees, which focuses on education, building education on resources and other means, and connecting folks with each other.
Morgan.
Yes.
On the physical improvement one, so we heard Alex speak about, an accessible playground in Reading that may not have actually been accessible. I think Marcy had referenced a playground equipment provider that was difficult to work with. I'm not sure if that was based on accessibility issues or not, but just curious on like that list of playgrounds. And I know the Universal Access Trail at Clark Nature Preserve. Who is responsible for actually making sure the asset is accessible? Is it sort of the project engineer that's hired and DCNR is looking when they fund a project that, you've built into your criteria, we're going to hire somebody that has experience with ADA accessible or, accessible assets in general? Or is it the local entity that's doing the work? I'm just curious, like where that plays in and like the quality control around that to make sure, to Alex's point, the perspective of disabled people with disabilities is reflected in it.
Yeah, I think that's a really important question, and I can give my answer now, and we might have a more detailed follow-up answer, but I expect that it probably the level of grant funding and where the development is happening probably determines who is sort of checking on that. If it's on our lands, all of the infrastructure that we made is built to ADA standards, and so if it's our land, it's certainly going to be matching up with certain requirements. I would have to think that if we are giving a grant to maybe a municipal park, they are probably the ones in charge of the design and the implementation, but we can definitely check on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just add some of the best examples we've seen is those communities that are working with the Center for Independent Living, having them come assess the property, do walkthroughs, and really understand the needs and look through the lens of individuals with a variety of different needs and or disabilities. So that is happening, and so we have an amazing grants team that reviews and evaluates these grants, and I think we strive to support the highest level of accessibility as much as we can.
Great.
All right, that is my last slide. Sarah has stepped out, which is, I think she's getting lunch. Good news. Are there any other questions?
I'll just comment too that Morgan, thank you for doing this presentation, but Morgan, as she mentioned, led us on this walk, a very simple walk from Rachel Carson Building over to the Capitol to see the Christmas tree in the rotunda, and very diligently pointed out factors along the way that I don't think we appreciate on a regular basis, of how difficult it might be for someone who may be in an adaptive device or a wheelchair. There's a very specific way that you need to enter the Capitol. For example, there's only one way that you can enter the Capitol, but just really appreciated that perspective. And so it is something I think that we need to think about on a regular basis. So.
Thank you, Nicole. Yeah, I think initiatives like walk audits are simple and quick and very effective at sort of opening people's eyes to the infrastructure around us and what might be problematic for users different than ourselves.
I think something worth mentioning that becomes very apparent this time of year too is the infrastructure is one issue, operations and maintenance is another. And when you walk around a community and look at how snow, for example, is managed, you can tell how, committed they are to really making streets accessible, buildings accessible. And that's probably extends to our trails and our parks as well, and thinking through not just what we build, but how we operate and maintain it.
And that was my point as well, the maintenance part. A lot of the grants and funding that's available is for new equipment, new installations, but really it just takes a bolt sometimes to fix the swing or to fix the part that makes the swing accessible to someone. A lot of times that's the plastic pieces that fall apart the fastest, and really it needs, a handy person out there to be able to do that. Is there any opportunity for training? Maybe this is a good question for Alex as well, to talk about training for practitioners, for maintenance people to do this work, to continue to ensure that that equipment that we spend so much money on is there for the long term.
Secretary Dunn, did you have?
Yeah, I can take that one if you don't mind. So the Pennsylvania Park and the PRPS, Pennsylvania Recreation Park Society, our partner that we grant fund for our recreation partners. There's 6,000 local parks in Pennsylvania, and many of the townships and counties are members of PRPS. There's a big conference in March. I don't know where it is, but they do a lot of training funded by us and sometimes staffed by some of our people. But maintenance is a huge issue, from everything from the rail trails to the equipment, you name it. I think one way our grant program differs from others is we offer a lot of technical assistance. We have program specialists. When we reorganized the Bureau of Rec and Con, we have the regional representatives, kind of the face of Bureau of Recreation and Conservation, and then we have program experts in each category. There's program experts in community parks. But the maintenance issue is so big that they run workshops and trainings and idea sharing because as soon as you build something, it starts to deteriorate, and it's a forever kind of an issue. Yeah, I don't know, Morgan, you might have had something else, but I just wanted to mention PRPS.
Yeah, that's great. I think I don't know of the initiatives that we might be doing with our staff, but I imagine that would be a really useful maybe training for practitioners, for staff that are frequently interacting with maybe our loaner cycles at different parks. That could be a great training.
Nice. Thanks.
Any other questions for Morgan? Jerry?
Language. It seems like we are seeing, not only in Pennsylvania, but nationwide, a lot more people from multiple language backgrounds that are having their own trouble. Do you focus any on that?
Yeah, that is absolutely a part of the Mosaic initiative, is thinking about how language can impact our users and what is accessible to them. So whether it's foreign languages or even just the words that we are using in English, if I'm a rock climber, and if I say if I throw out a bunch of rock climbing jargon at you, you're not going to know what I'm talking about. And that's not accessible to you. And so thinking about how we use certain words to convey instruction and invitation to people, where does that exclude people and where does that invite people in? In our SCORP research that we've done, and as we're writing the state comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, we did a lot of outreach and we did a big survey in the spring, and we learned specifically that the term barbecue did not resonate with a lot of specifically African American populations, and the term that was more relatable and familiar to people was cookout. I think, right? That's the right term, was cookout. And so people said, I don't know what barbecue, who's doing a barbecue, but we're having a cookout. And so that specific language is really important to making things accessible, making things inviting, and feeling like people are welcome. So it can be different, literally different languages, but it can also be different words within English.
I'll also note that Morgan is leading the efforts on developing a language access plan for our department. So that will help us be very intentional about how we communicate and support those who may use English as a second language. Also, the Center for Rural PA did a really great analysis on the languages used across the Commonwealth, which helps us better understand where different languages are prominent, that can help us support, our, outreach as well.
All right. Well, thanks, Morgan. And quick question for you on a personal level. Where are you in your fellowship term?
Yeah, my fellowship ends on August 1st. So I'm 3/4 of the way through it about. And then who knows what the future holds for me.
Secretary is a retention plan for Morgan. Keep her in PA at least.
I'll be here for lunch today.
Okay, well, that's something.
Available for networking opportunities.
Well, excellent work as always. Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
presentation. And now we'll round out our meeting with Secretary Dunn and Nicole providing some updates on behalf of DCNR.
My feet are still warming up from the drive down from State College, the forestry gathering. I know Marcy is heading, John Norbeck's up there. A lot of our staff are up at State College. It's the annual forestry gathering, 3-day training. And, Seth, when I left this morning, was reviewing the new strategic plan for forestry with everybody and doing a great job. So it's very lively and interesting and memorable event. Just on the topic of the day, which is really great, accessibility. One of the coolest things I've seen in our system, that I encourage everyone to try, is the Century Trail at Cook Forest. So you look at some of these like unique Pennsylvania experiences that every Pennsylvanian should have access to, and the Cathedral Forest at Cook Forest is one of them. And but it looks very difficult to access. I mean, it's not easy. But the staff there created an accessible trail. And it's a sensory trail, so folks that are without sight or need wheels can use that. But it's just kind of what's cool as a person with sight is you can temporarily choose to be without sight and do it, and just go around. There's a wire you follow. And of course, being in the woods like that, the warblers, the birds are really, so you get a sense of the full sensory experience if you try it yourself. Anyway, that's just one of the extremely cool additions. And of course, we're looking at the complexity. I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg as you look at the children that may have autism and other issues when they approach a playground and understanding their interaction with a physical thing. So this is a science. Also, on the infrastructure side, as Morgan so adeptly laid out, some of the accessibility on the physical side. Building design, structural design, there's a science there to make a place appear welcoming and inviting to all. It's like anything you get into, it's deeper and more complex than you realize. So I could say we have a long way to go in this journey because I think the science is just really emerging. National Park Service has some experts on inclusive design, park and building and stuff like that. And a good example in Pittsburgh, we fund a lot of projects that River Life does, but they also raise a ton of foundational money. But River Life has done some really neat inclusive designs of and welcoming spaces at some of their more recent parks and parklets on the North Shore. So yeah, Ephraim's nodding. He's probably seen these. Yeah, you could probably articulate them better than I can, but that you understand when you see it, you understand it. It's really quite remarkable. Anyway, so that just shows you this science and this long way to go that we all can travel. A couple of things from us again, just for coming down from forestry. All of our bureaus are assembling their accomplishments of 24 and the department-wide accomplishments. But one thing I'll mention here, because we have so many folks interested in forest products, in 24, we reached our 14,000 acre goal for silviculture. And of course, this is our ecosystem-based management, so it's serving our ecological goals too. And that was pretty amazing. And the fourth quarter itself had 33 timber sales that went out for bid. 17.8 million board feet, 5,800 acres treated. So, and that takes a lot of staff on hand. Our utilization report, exports to China were increasing as China was rushing to do imports ahead of tariffs, ahead of new administration's tariffs. So there'll be like a bump for now, and then depending on what happens tariff-wise, then we got to pay attention to the other side of that. If there's a tariff and the export stuff. Again, it's Pennsylvania benefits more when the products are built more locally, but the exports to China are important to the whole system. So that's just something to keep in mind. Also heard in forestry's reports yesterday, they managed to cap 95 orphan wells in the Corn Planter and the Susquehanna districts. Again, these are wells that are just, conventional wells just belching methane. So one of the many contributions to the climate issue we can make are capping these orphan wells. And John Norbeck had directed some of our infrastructure dollars to that. There is a big EPA, DEP program, if it continues to be funded, I'm not sure, from the feds, but they, by necessity, focus on the wells closest to, the big leaks close to population bases. A lot of our small conventional wells that are leaking are not close to populations. They're not high in the priority list. So we're just going ahead and capping some ourselves to just try to get ahead of the methane leakage. Just I want to just comment this. I heard Marcy's presentation on the way down in the car. We had the meeting going, so I could hear the meeting from pretty much the beginning. But yeah, I can't emphasize how important PPFF is as a partner to DCNR. As Marcy mentioned, this is our 30th year. So in July, it'll be our 30th year of existence. And almost from the beginning, John Oliver talked about forming a friends group. It took a couple of years to get it going. So she mentioned it's their 25th year, but that partnership with a private nonprofit really differentiates a lot of DCNR's work, maybe from other agencies. When DCNR was built from the creation from the old DER, split into DEP and DCNR, one of the founding principles was partnership. So the whole agency is conceived on the idea that the work be done in partnership. So it's by design and structure that we're built for partnerships. By the way, the other principles are stewardship and service. Again, very much a public service agency by nature, and also stewardship. We're entrusted with these resources for all Pennsylvanians and future generations. So we'll be talking a little bit as the year goes on about some of our history. I'm old enough to know it. So some I can recall from memory, but we're also going to be digging into files and pulling out some interesting stuff, talking to John Oliver and past secretaries and stuff like that. On wildfires, it's somewhat obvious that the wildfire danger is very low right now in Pennsylvania. I challenge you to get a wildfire started right now. But we have a single resource sent to Los Angeles, and we're on the ready to send a crew and a truck or two, or 6 or so trucks and 5. We're ready if we get called out. And I suspect the recovery and the work in the LA area from the extreme, wildfire situation will be ongoing. PEMA, of course, coordinates our response to emergencies. 24 had a lot of emergencies. I mean, Point State Park flooded twice at really a bad time, like right as things were gearing up in June, and we had to have our own crews from around the state show up with, fire trucks and stuff to get rid of the mud. We responded to Hurricane Debbie. The DCNR staff were sort of the heart of the incident team in place in northern Tioga County for the flood victims. And a lot of our incident teams have done both fires and flooding. Flooding is way worse than fire. Fires are bad, but flooding is horrible. And the Debbie response up in Tioga was really, the heart of it was really our staff. So that's we don't know what this year will bring, but this complexity of more emergencies that pull people away from their day job the way we do it. We don't have a crews of people just sitting around waiting for fires and floods. They have other jobs. They're managers, they're foresters, but they're trained in incident management and wildfire. So obviously when we have to send crew after crew after crew, they're not doing the job back at the forest district. This is complexity.
For those kinds of responses, is there additional funding that the state provides to DCNR to sort of compensate for resources you're using on general emergencies?
Yeah, I think we asked for some compensation during the COVID pandemic because Nicole, we were manning a lot of the incident response during COVID, and some of the initial big command centers and tents and stuff like that. But for the wildfires, U.S. Forest Service has a program that funds, and then the state that requests or needs it usually reimburses. But I don't know what's going to happen if California is going to be able to reimburse given the scale. But U.S. Forest Service coordinates and funds. Again, federal funding in the future. We'll see what. As I imagine, the fire funding will stay stable. I hope it does. But that we have used that system too when we had the big, the big fire in the Poconos. In 2016, we had to call in out-of-state resources, including from Arizona. There's a highly trained crew from Arizona that comes around when things are really bad and called in. They're called the Hot Shots. It's an Apache group, and they came in. They're like, if you're really having trouble, then you call the Hot Shots. And they came in to help us because we couldn't we just couldn't get that fire under control. So we'll see. Hoping this year is not like that. Because it does cost us a lot of money every time we contract with like helicopters and fixed wing, both on response, and that's a contract, so that's a direct cost that's different every year. We put some in the budget what we predict we'll need, but you got a couple of fires going. You don't want to err on the side of if you're on the ground, incident manager says they need a helicopter, you're going to say no, you're not likely to say no. When a fire is like the Gap fire this year was really moving up the Kittatinny toward houses. And so, yeah, we got the helicopter, but that's a pretty hefty price tag. On the positive side, Bob will be glad to hear we sent a load of snowmobile ATV grants out, 1.4 million. Just went out the door. I think at the last minute, we talked about the big grant round, 80 million that went out in the fall. I believe we covered that at the December meeting, Nicole. Yeah. So this snowmobile ATV now goes out quarterly. So that just went out. There were 5 projects. Again, the amount of money on a quarterly basis with the amount being low, and that's something we'll talk about in a different meeting. But the amount, but we did support five projects. So 5 projects or 5 projects. Also, we've opened up the new C2P2 grant round, Community Conservation Partnership grant round, and the applications are due on April 2nd. That's a little earlier than usual. So anyone who's a grant applicant, pay attention to that. Other plannings going forward on the new state parks, Susquehanna Riverlands, master planning. There's been some trail development there already, but the master planning process is moving along. Community local leaders, I think Silas and his friends have created a bow wave of support for the recreation there, and people were eager for it. the new switchback trail was developed from the river to the top of the bluff, the cliff. So that's kind of neat already. And the climbing communities, Morgan will be glad to know, has been very involved there. And we're going to say yes to climbing and figure out how to do it. It's a logical place for climbing. Vosburg Neck, we've got the full complement of full-time people, and they'll fill the seasonal positions for the upcoming season. Big Elk, we have a task force working on the master plan. I understand from John Hallis, the meeting went well last night. They came up with a conceptual final master plan for the development at Big Elk Creek, which is down in southern Chester County, right on the Mason-Dixon line. Also, last year we did the biggest buffer planting we've ever done anywhere in the state on the Big Elk, and that goes into the Chesapeake Bay, which is interesting. I mean, it goes right to the Chesapeake Bay, not to the Susquehanna, so it's not dammed. It's one of the few free-flowing streams into the Chesapeake Bay. And so it's important to clean it up, and we'll get the reward of migratory fish for that cleanup. So that was really cool. We went down to the creek after the planting and saw a migratory lamprey in the creek. So it was pretty cool. River of the Year. So the voting is open for the River of the Year. The Delaware, the Perkiomen, and Youghiogheny are in the running. So vote early and often. If you're voting more than once, you have to do it from a different email address. It ends on, I'm just saying, I'm not that I'd ever do that.
Anybody's doing that.
I would never do that. It ends on the 24th.
Will you repeat that list?
Perkiomen, the Delaware, which is, of course, it's like the full Delaware, it's immense, and then the Youghiogheny. Delaware and Youghiogheny have had it before. I don't remember how long ago. I do remember the Delaware was, at least a section of Delaware made it not too long ago, because I always try to go in the River of the Year sojourn.
Jerry and I are offended. There's no Lehigh or Susquehanna.
Yeah, Susquehanna's gotten it many times, different sections. Lehigh, Lehigh got it recently. Yeah, Lehigh got it like 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah, 2 or 3, I think.
2 or 3, yeah. I went with Chris Cucker down to Lehigh on that one. But anyway, so there's it's exciting. The designations have been presented since 1983. So it predates DCNR. And then, of course, we partner with the Pennsylvania Organization for Watersheds and Rivers. I heard Janet talking about power. It's housed with PEC. And so Janet if I said something wrong about the River of the Year voting, then she can correct me, but encourage people to vote. Office of Outdoor Rec, I heard Silas cover that. So you covered that way better than I was going to, but stay tuned. The locations of the outdoor business meetings will be announced. I think it'll be pretty exciting. Again, the momentum that we're building, collectively, Silas and Nathan and our team is pretty remarkable. I think, collectively we'll all take credit for that boost in the Bureau of Economic Administration number for Pennsylvania. May as well, right? Now, if it goes down, then we'll have to think of, it was the weather. If it goes down, it was the weather. But important to us, I think the public lands are really the heart of the outdoor recreation in Pennsylvania, parks, forests. Of course, our rail trails are important. The rivers themselves are important. Pennsylvania being a very river-rich state. We just have the natural basis for this economic driver is something we're really blessed with in Pennsylvania. So we'll continue to advance the work in outdoor recreation, advance the practice, the sustainability side, and use it as an avenue to bring people closer to nature, understand nature, and connect the recreation and conservation side of our work, cement it more closely, understand it better. I think everyone here would say like their first interest in nature probably came from outdoor recreation, and from hiking or fishing with a parent or boating or biking. Recreation opens people's eyes to conservation. So we'll continue to work on that linkage and how to enrich and deepen that connection with visitors on the public lands, especially. I think that's it for me.
Cindy, I'd like you all to be aware, I think you probably are, our Susquehanna Greenway Partnership has got a new leader. Our executive director is Leslie Warner. from,
I met her at the New Trail Brewing that day.
Yeah.
At the trail, trail event, yeah.
and she's very enthusiastic. And we still have Alana and Poppy and on our staff. And
She's very knowledgeable. She really hit the ground running, very energetic. I was totally impressed. We did a big trail connector event in December. Jerry was there. It was in Williamsport. Because of inclement weather, we did it in the New Trail.
Yeah.
I got a lot of grief. They're doing a trail gap opening with a wall of beer behind me.
Do it anywhere. But
Yeah, but as well. Yeah, right.
That added a pleasant element.
Yeah, well, yeah, unfortunately with the inclement weather and the drive, I couldn't sample the wares too much, but yeah, well, I know the product is a good product.
Yeah. And they've got a Pennsylvania Wilds brew.
I know. And they donate part of, through Marcy, they donate part of the replenish to PPFF for tree planting. And then the state parks series they do, PPFF, again, another reason to have a private partner. You can capture the goodwill.
This may be premature to ask, and I have no idea how the funding works, but I'm just wondering if the very profitable National Football League plans any assistance to Pittsburgh and DCNR for the use of Point State Park, or how they could show their appreciation. If I'd be glad to offer some ideas.
Yeah, we'll make sure they show their appreciation. We are like the point's closed for essentially the summer as we get ready for the big 2026. We have to redo the sidewalks. I mean, there's a fancier name for sidewalks, the point, the plaza or whatever we call it. But we have to redo a lot of the infrastructure on underground and on the sidewalks, getting ready. And I know I could have a more specific answer for you next time. Well, I'll remember to get the details on that, on how with the flow of the finances. But like a lot of the state, I'll be saying to legislators at our budget hearing shortly, the asset of the parks and trails and forests draws people in, and they spend a lot of money not in the state park, and it grows as a whole, it grows the economy like Silas has been talking about, and that we don't get to claim the income directly, but it's very real and it's very connected to the assets. But I suspect a lot of the benefit that'll accrue is going to be in the whole Pittsburgh region. But also we do charge for the use of the public space.
Great. I just as I have to buy additional streaming services about every 10 minutes to watch the games, it just reminds me that somebody's profiting here, and maybe it should be us.
Yeah, we'll make sure we get our fair share.
What event were you talking about?
NFL's
Oh.
Yeah. We sent some people out to the current one just to see how it works. So we sent our chief ranger out and just to get a sense of. I mean,
Good recon mission.
Oh, it was. Yeah, they had a good. We sent the park manager and the chief ranger out because it's a big deal. It's a complex thing.
After all.
Yeah, it is.
Actually, a number of years ago, it was in Philadelphia, so there's some other resources to look at.
I'm sorry, what's that?
A number of years ago, it was in Philadelphia.
Oh, was it? Okay.
So another example,
Okay. No, I didn't. I had not remembered that. That's good to know.
unless you follow it, it's,
Right.
it's off the radar.
All right. Oh, Sarah.
I know we're running on time, but and it might be premature to ask. We've had a lot of great presentations today on DEIB and accessibility, and with the new administration and some of the changes in policy and things. Do you foresee the department still having these as priorities moving forward? And again, I know it's
Sarah, I'm glad you asked. I mean, I thought about this saying it, but this is better. No, this is, I mean, we're committed. Our job is the citizens of Pennsylvania. Our job is public lands, and our staff will stay the course. And the work we're doing on the hiring is managed by OA IT. There's more, there's a lot of lawyers' eyes on hiring. So we're good in all that. And Arlene leads our Mosaic effort. It's really well built. Arlene happens to be an attorney herself, so I have complete confidence that our Mosaic will thrive as full steam ahead. The video we just showed staff was really well accepted at Forestry. It talked about from different perspectives of different staff and how they view Mosaic and what it really means and who it includes. It's really very inclusive of all people with various abilities, people, various ethnic and racial backgrounds, age, education, perspectives. But ours is based on the Constitution, the Environmental Rights Amendment, particularly, that serve all citizens and all citizens have the right to clean air, pure water, and access to natural, aesthetic, and historic environments. So we're well built in the Constitution, and we've built upwards from that. And if you look at DCNR's mission, which we'll be talking about more as the 30th year, you can see that our mission was built right off the Constitution.
Yeah.
Again, very, very well built and well grounded legally. So I have complete confidence in our Mosaic program and its ability to go forward. Now, the concern might be public perception. A lot of people, a lot of the public doesn't understand government. They don't understand exactly how government's built, federal, state, local. So they may think something's different than it really is. So that's a fair question, Sarah. I'm glad you raised it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate all the work you've done to make, the parks and our state forest accessible to most Pennsylvanians.
Thank
you. We mentioned it earlier, but Alan Dietrich Ward's book, Cradle of Conservation, you have a joint event coming up. Do you know the date of that one off the top of your head? So you can look.
March 16th, I want to say. It's in Harrisburg to Midtown. I'll quickly scroll.
Marcy passed around the book earlier.
Yeah, no, I'm going to have to reread it. History I love history, but it doesn't always stick. And Alan is brilliant on this topic. And unfortunately, people think of my job like I know everything there is to know about our agency's history, and I don't. So it'll be a learning experience for me too. But anyway, the book is really good, and I'll look forward to the conversation. Again, I'll have to review it to keep up with Alan here. I'm looking for it. I'm sorry, it's not popping up, but we'll get that. Yeah, no, I got a little time on that. It's coming up soon.
All right. Well, thank you, Secretary Dunn. And I think, there you go. Meredith Hill came through for you. The 27th of March at Midtown Scholar.
Okay, good. I got
a little longer.
It's good.
And Nicole, I know you had just a few things probably that we can.
We'll try to be quick because I am holding you from your lunch, and I am not that kind of person. I am not that cruel. So one, thank you to Sarah and to Matt for your service. I'm very sorry to see you both leave. Sarah's headed to Colorado, Cindy. Yes, she's leaving our great state. So we appreciate your service, and that does leave. So we have this leaves 4 vacancies on council. We have, and then we have 2, we had 3, and then Matt is in the process of resigning, as was mentioned earlier. But we have both Meredith and Jerry, whose terms expired in January 2025, but of course they'll continue on, and we are working on getting them reappointed. We'll keep you updated on that, but we've already provided information to the governor's office on those reappointments. So, and we're working on finding some individuals who can kind of help balance out the expertise on council. So hopefully we'll keep you posted in the next meeting on that. So.
Nicole.
Yes.
I think Cindy had told me that sometimes the legislators get involved. Do I need to reach out to my local legislators and get their support?
Let's talk about that. We have different appointments through different means. So we have the governor's appointments, we have the House, and then we have the Senate.
Yeah.
And so Your appointment is through
Governors,
the
I think.
governor's office, correct? Yeah.
But does it still need support of the legislators?
Let's talk about that. I'm going to reach back and get an update from them. The part of the challenge is just they manage all of these councils.
Yeah.
So it's not that they're not interested in reappointing you. It's just that they have this kind of flurry of appointments and reappointments that they're managing. Just imagine all of the councils that exist across all of the departments.
Right.
And that's where one person in the governor's office is kind of coordinating. So, but I'll follow up with you on that.
Thank you.
Just a quick update from a federal perspective. One, certainly we've been kind of following what's happening with the new administration. There's been a flurry of executive orders, as I'm sure you saw. We're obviously interested in what's happening from a climate perspective. None of the executive orders necessarily have a direct impact on DCNR. Even the funding, anything that has to, any funding that has been distributed to the department, of course, would have to be altered through Congress. But it's just kind of understanding that the administration has, of course, pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement. Pennsylvania is a part of the U.S. Climate Alliance, which is a compact of states across the country working to support climate actions. That work will continue. So we'll just keep you posted from a kind of a federal perspective as things kind of roll out moving forward. And of course, we are watching how some of our federal fundings may be impacted because you're hearing a lot of conversation around, how in certain investments, how they're looking to reduce spending at the federal level. So more on that. Also just wanted to update you. So the Biden administration in the earlier part of last year had established a plan to build out national interest electric transmission corridors. And so these are intended to basically, support large expansion of electricity across a variety of different regions. There were 10 originally proposed in October. They released their phase, I believe it's phase 3, where they have narrowed it down to 3. There were 2 that were originally proposed in Pennsylvania. We submitted comments mainly because we had some concerns that one of those proposed, which is the Lake Erie Canada Transmission Corridor, basically traversed directly across Erie Bluffs State Park, which was a very interesting thing to do. Yeah, they did. So we, of course, asked that they limit the impacts on the state parks. And so the good news is that the latest proposal does, the corridor basically goes to the southwest of the state park. They also narrowed, so there's going to be an above ground portion of it, and then it will go be submerged along Lake Erie. I don't know what the future of these corridors are under the current administration. They may have different energy priorities, and so this is just simply based on what has been proposed under the former administration. So we'll keep you certainly posted on that. And then we mentioned just a couple of updates on the plan. So we talked about forestry. We should be expecting that final plan to be released sometime in February. So we'll make sure that if you're not on that list, we'll make sure that we do a specific email to Congress members so you get that information. I may have mentioned in a prior meeting, the Bureau of Recreation is working on the Pennsylvania Trails Advisory, the Pennsylvania Land and Water Trail Network Strategic Plan. So the Trails Advisory Council is very active in the development of this plan. We're going to have a draft document to share with CONREC members probably towards the end of January, early February. With all of these plans, we can talk in our business meeting about who might want to take the lead in developing comments and feedback so that we make sure that CONREC has a voice in the development of these plans. SCORP, the statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. That public comment period will begin February 3rd. It'll be open for about a month. So we will be sharing draft materials again with CONRAC, so you have an opportunity to provide input on that as well. And then the climate action plan, we are continuing to develop that. CONRAC will have an opportunity to provide some feedback and input on that plan as well before it is finalized. And those are all my updates.
Any questions for Nicole?
Thank you. I tried. I'm also hungry.
There's a lot of text on that update and you consolidated well. All right, so we will open up our second, we don't have any council business, so we'll open up our second public comment period. Are there any public comments from participants online? And it looks like there is at least one. From which one are you opening? Randy Green? Okay. Randy, you'll be unmuted in a second. Or you should be able to unmute yourself now. Oh. You can try to unmute now. Oh, Randy, are you unmuted? So we cannot hear you. Yeah, Randy, for whatever reason, we're not able to hear you. So if you'd like to provide the comment in the chat, we can read it publicly. And while we're waiting for that potential comment, if there's any other public comment. Okay. Seeing none, if Randy does send in a public comment, we can certainly make that part of our minutes and respond accordingly. We will have a working session after this to discuss a few items for CONRAC, so we'll try to keep that brief. But for now, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn the public meeting.
Silas, can you hear me now?
Oh, we can hear you now. Yep, go ahead,
Okay.
Randy.
Sorry to interrupt adjournment and lunch. If you just give me a minute
Just
here.
in time, no. Go for it.
Again, this is Randy Green. I'm with the PSSA Snowmobile Association Trails Committee. Thank you for this opportunity to comment. I do want to mirror Bob Kirshner's comments regarding the weather. The PSSA Trails Committee is overseeing the launch of the new PSSA Trail Conditions online site and app. If you're not familiar with the PSSA Trail Conditions, we are mapping the state's 6,000 miles of snowmobile trails. And here's the biggie, reporting if there's rideable snow on those trails. This is quite a task. This brings PA in line with what's available in many other states like New York, New Hampshire, and Vermont. This has been a cooperative effort between PSSA, DCNR Department of Forestry, DCED, the PA Game Commission, SIPO, and the local snowmobile clubs. The purpose of my comments today is to applaud District Forester, map guru, Jeremy Newman. From the Trails Committee's perspective, Jeremy's been wonderful to work with. Very conscientious, gets things done with urgency, embraces the challenges we faced, hardworking, exacting, and more. I've heard that Governor Shapiro wants things done in a timely manner, and Jeremy is doing that and more. I also have to applaud what's happening at the district level with regard to the platform. District foresters and their staff are also moving the platform forward and fast. Their cooperation has been as exciting as we work and learn things together. Again, they're looking to get things done right and quickly. Their cooperation has been exemplary. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention the district forestal regional support and Harrisburg support that we're getting. In November, in the Bald Eagle State Forest Office, PSSA met with many district foresters to discuss how we work together for snowmobiling this winter. PSSA was impressed with the DCNR regional and state level participation, showing support and understanding of the support. We met some new faces there and reacquainted with others. Again, it was great to see this support and participation. Thank you, DCNR, for what you do for snowmobilers. And yes, we love winter. Those are my comments.
That's excellent. I'm glad you were able to connect there. That sounds like a wonderful platform, honestly, and something that I think there'll be a lot of interest in. It's nice to hear about the interagency collaboration around it as well. Bob, do you have anything to add to that?
No, it's just as Randy said, it kind of brings us in line with what's been available in other states, and it couldn't come in a better winter. And PSSA's worked hard on it, and I noticed Randy's on almost every one of these CONRAC calls, and so I also appreciate the support of himself and the PSSA. So thank you.
Excellent. And thanks for the kind words and public affirmation of the forestry staff for their role in that as well. Okay,
You're welcome.
so now we'll.
Much appreciated.
Thanks, Randy. Jerry.
I'd like to offer a suggestion for a future topic.
Sure.
Get Ryan and others to update us on the Weber Natural Wild Area proposal in Pine Creek.
Duly noted. Thanks, Jerry. Is there a motion to adjourn the public meeting?
I'll make that motion.
It's yours. A second?
Second.
Thanks, Gary. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Our meeting's adjourned.